back. Now, South African NGOs are taking part in the UN Water Conference, which gets underway in New York tomorrow. The conference is seen as once in a generation chance to get the world on track for a water-secure world for all and everywhere. Wiseman Mkhize from the African Global Networks is one of the speakers at the conference, and he joins me now to tell us more. Thank you very much, Wiseman, for your time here on eNCA. Firstly, as South Africans, how important is it that Team South Africa is able to convince investors who are likely going to be there from tomorrow to invest in our country when it comes to water, especially because we've been told time and time again that we are a water-scarce country?
Indeed. Good morning, Masego and the eNCA viewers. It's a watershed moment for South Africa and the global world, actually, in terms of water, which we all know it's SDG number 6. And it's very important for us as a country to put our story very much good in terms of talking to investors, to invest back in the country in terms of the infrastructure for water. Like today, before the kickstart of the conference tomorrow, we are going to have a side event as African Global Network, supported by the KZN government, in terms of trying to speak to various people, various networks, and other colleagues here in terms of other countries on what we can do together and share the challenges that we are facing as different countries in water and sanitation development.
What about infrastructure development? I mean, I'll tell you a story, Mr. Mkhize. A few days ago, actually, I think 2 weeks ago, I visited Lesotho, a country that is rich with water. Lesotho, we've been told, is rich with water. It provides South Africa with water. But when you go to the rural areas of Lesotho, those people there don't have access to water, but their country supplies many African countries with water. How does this happen? Where's the delay or the miscommunication in our continent?
You're putting it very well. Our theme for this afternoon side event as the non-government stakeholder, we propose to the United Nations that we need to zoom into the provision of water by developing nations to rural communities. That's what we are discussing later on today. But to add on that, if you're looking at the province like KwaZulu-Natal, is when you see that they already have a master plan for water. And if we can encourage more governments to do that, how do we accelerate the provision of water to many of the rural communities? In the conference itself, there's like 5 interactive dialogues. And I know that there is one on the transboundary, water for transboundary and discussions, which means, for instance, as you are well putting it, that Lesotho is even supplying even South Africa. So we need to have those bilateral agreements, which tomorrow our minister will deliver a national message on what we are doing in terms of other bilateral agreements. And there's a number of them that he's going to sign, I have heard. So we will wait and see what our Minister Senzo Mchunu is delivering on that. But what is important is that we are, as KZN, are here, and we are also supporting the minister on this. The delegation from KwaZulu-Natal provincial government are here, and we are supporting them as a non-government stakeholder to fast-track these discussions and also to find other networks in other countries. I know that later, after our side event, we are also deliberating with Ghana, with Netherlands, with France at the French Institute here in New York, and to see what is it that we are doing in wastewater, for instance. So those are the kind of discussions that are happening here in New York.
And I mean, I said this to my previous guest as well. It's quite important that I discuss this with you on a day such as today, which is Human Rights Day. And of course, access to water, clean, drinkable water, which at some point after the floods in KZN became a problem in areas such as Phoenix, etc. But also the fact that if without power, we've also seen some areas also start to struggle with pumping water to people's taps. So, how do we know that this is not going to be another talk shop and that in South Africa, we won't be hearing about a Nelson Mandela Bay approaching day 0?
That's a very important one. And I must allude to the fact that us, as the non-government stakeholder, we have got to play our role, not only to become sort of enemies to government, but to be seen as fast trackers of such developments. What is important is that the conference is starting tomorrow and it's ending on Saturday. What are we taking back home, and how are we sort of whipping the government to say these are the developments that came out of this conference? What is it that we are doing? As I've said, KZN has already have a master plan, but again, a master plan means nothing if it's not being delivered into actionable plans, which will ensure umuntu kanongoma, umuntu ose Msunduzi does get water, as you have put. It's a basic human right that everyone needs to enjoy as enshrined in the Constitution.
All right. And in terms of what the minister will say, are you hoping that there'll be investment or people willing to invest, particularly in infrastructure? I mean, South Africa is a country, for instance, Mr. Mkhize, that has artisans, people who have gone to university to study to become engineers to help our country. But there are no jobs. There are no companies that are hiring in some of these areas, and our artisans end up leaving the country to go help other countries. Are you hoping investors will also look into things such as having businesses here that will create jobs and also make sure that there's infrastructure development?
Masego, when you're looking at the framework of the United Nations and the SDGs in particular, which is where we are more focused on, you've got like 17 of those SDGs, and they're talking like goal number 1, end poverty, goal number 2, end hunger, and so on and so on. And you get to SDG number 6, which is water. So all of this is talking to the planning of the governments. How are they planning and ensuring that these plans are effective enough to say, you cannot talk about water when you are not talking about the efficiency of energy in any country, because as you have said, in Lesotho there's plenty of water, but the reticulation of that water becomes a challenge. So I guess we need to look at the holistical plan of all the SDGs and say, as a country, how are we doing in terms of all those SDGs? And very interestingly, the goal 17 of the UN is talking about partnerships, so which is what we are aiming to achieve as the NGO later today at this side event we are hosting. Yesterday alone, I met about 2 of such investors who were saying, we do have resources available. We are interested in water development. So let's see how it goes today, and maybe we will be lucky as a country, because again, once we have got those, we are able to take them to DWS and the province and say, here are the investors, potential investors, and then what do you do about them?
And we're a country that has recently also been grey-listed, so good luck to you and the rest of Team South Africa. Hopefully you're able to give us some positive feedback on what happened there in New York. Themba Mkhize, or rather, apologies, Wiseman Mkhize speaking to us there.